ever mentioned I actually really like vampires? So, vampires. You either love them or you hate them, and me personally, I really quite like them. If you're gonna make me pick a paranormal creature that I want to see in my fiction, I want to see someone play with vampires. Give me nightwalkers who lust for blood and violence, who long since forsook their humanity in favor of immortality. So why did it take me so long to watch Hellsing and Hellsing Ultimate? I honestly have no idea, but now that I have, I am glad that I did. I streamed both of these back to back, and so what I thought would be fun is sort of to review each in turn, but kind of more in a comparative way. Because we're dealing with two different anime that are dealing with the exact same characters, however with different plots, we'll get to that in a moment, I figured it's only fair to kind of compare them and see which one I preferred, or at least which one I preferred in certain areas. So I suppose it's best to start with the first of these two adaptations of the original manga, entitled Hellsing. Hellsing tells the story of red trenchcoat wearing ultimate badass Alucard, who works for the Hellsing Corporation led by Sir Integra. Yes, Sir, she's a woman, it's actually kind of awesome. And he is, in fact, a vampire who hunts vampires. It's, again, kind of awesome. The first adaptation of Hellsing only has one season, but runs for 13 episodes, each clocking in at the average kind of like 20-something minutes. The second adaptation, Hellsing Ultimate, ran for only 10 episodes, except technically there were 10 OVAs, or original video animations, and they each clocked in around 50 minutes. Which is kind of cool, because that means you're getting even more content and it's kind of glorious. Between the two series of Hellsing and Hellsing Ultimate, I would argue that in terms of overall production, Hellsing Ultimate takes the cake. Its animation is far more fluid, far more detailed, and overall, far more consistent. That was ultimately my biggest gripe with the original Hellsing, is that the animation was really quite inconsistent, as some things would be animated quite beautifully and very detailed, and other things, not so much. But what's most interesting is that while the animation of Hellsing Ultimate is certainly more sumptuous and fluid than Hellsing, it actually comes at the price of something I really loved about the first and original series, and that was the noir-like use of shadows and light. Yeah, again, there were definitely times where I felt the animation looked, well, a little on the side of dated, but oftentimes the effect of that was some clever use of black and red color blocking in order to predominantly cover characters, especially Alucard in shadows. And damn if I'm not a sucker for noir, especially the look of noir, which fits Hellsing so well. But again, the animation of Hellsing does look dated at times, and there's an overall inconsistency to it that Hellsing Ultimate does not have. Sure, Hellsing Ultimate brings in moments of kind of deliberately bad animation for the sake of comedy, something which I can only assume stems from the original manga, which I still have yet to read. I will, I promise. Actually, that's something I want to touch on. I don't usually read a lot of manga, especially if I've already seen the anime adaptation. And yeah, I'm aware, adaptations do not always do justice to their source material, especially if, say, animators have to suddenly run off and create their own storyline due to pulling from incomplete material, like with Hellsing. But I prefer seeing the movement of animation on screen more than what's done in still frames on a page. Sure, you can give the impression of movement, but there's nothing quite like actually seeing it. There's also the fact that buying manga adds up, especially if you read it as quickly as I do, and, burning through that much cash on manga where I might not ever go back to it. No. That being said, I do actually plan on reading the Hellsing manga, despite having watched Hellsing Ultimate. Again, I call to that lighting. This is something I've also noticed in another adaptation of this same author, entitled Drifters, which leads me to believe it's something inherent in the original work. So I'd love to see how the author drew his panels and handled the play of shadow and light. And since I brought up plot, Hellsing the original, the plot is definitely the weakest part. It starts out kind of fine, but then sort of starts to derail in a story involving chips which are turning people into fake vampires, kind of, except then that plot is never really wrapped up, and there's a strange character called Incognito who shows up. From what I've gathered, he's not in the manga, and the character just didn't make much sense, and I honestly was not a fan of the back half plot of the original series, and I found it really frustrating where it had started out kind of fun and interesting, sort of. The main issue I had with the original Hellsing is that there's not enough Alucard. I showed up for the red duster-wearing vampire who's a vampire hunter, and he's kind of not in it a lot, and I went, yo, I showed up with the badass. And when he's there, it's great. But when he's not, what the hell? Ultimately, while most of the characters of Hellsing were quite strong, Alucard, Sir Integra, Alexander Anderson, plenty of good characters, there were some that just didn't quite hold it for me, mainly Incognito, and I did also actually find our police girl, frustrating. Ceres ends up being one of the main point of view characters, and I found her kind of insufferable for most of it because she never really develops all that much. And I'm going, in 13 episodes, this character should have developed somewhere, please. So on the whole, if I had to rate Hellsing, it'd be somewhere in the middle, like a 5 out of 10, like maybe a 6. There's some really, really good things in it, and what it did well, it did do well, but what it didn't do well was just frustrating. So frustrating. And I much prefer the plot of Hellsing Ultimate, though there are certainly problems with that plot. The plot of Hellsing Ultimate was more streamlined, everything tied together, and yeah, admittedly, 6 out of the 10 episodes are pretty much devoted to a single battle, but since I'm a sucker for all things show me a battle and show me every angle of it, I was admittedly okay with that. And I also think the dialogue of Hellsing Ultimate was far stronger. There were some truly brilliant lines that came out of Hellsing Ultimate, and goodness, I just want them all written down in a book somewhere so I can have them. Oh, I guess that's called buying the manga. And yet what Hellsing lacked in plot, Hellsing Ultimate often lacked it in character development, or more importantly, the art of showing and not telling. Given how many more characters there are in Hellsing Ultimate, this is really more than a little disappointing. And I am also biased because one of my favorite characters came out of Hellsing Ultimate, and that is Pip Bernadotte, captain of a band of mercenaries known as the Wild Geese. My small mercenary sons, I need a moment. Actually, let's talk about Pip, and that I think his treatment is a little unfair in the anime, and that he's there, and then he kind of disappears for a whole bunch of episodes, but then magically comes back. And sure, the episodes where he comes back and really features heavily are fantastic, and that is in no small part to the fact that, praise the Lord, we have Yuri fucking Lowenthal voicing Pip with his glorious French accent, and just... thank you, Yuri Lowenthal, because goddamn, both that character and the voice acting for that character just were so on point, and I loved everything about it. He really made me love Pip, a character who, again, is there, disappears for a long time, and then comes back. This is a character I could have easily forgotten about. And since we're on the topic of voice actors, and I mentioned Yuri Lowenthal, I did watch both of these series in their Japanese and their English dubs, because I'd heard good things about both. And I made a point to watch both because Alucard was voiced by two of my favorites in voice acting, and that is Joji Nakata and Crispin Freeman. Now, don't get me wrong, I fucking love Joji Nakata. Just that man. I kind of fell in love with him when he did Gankutsuo, but that man just, yes. But I have to say that Crispin Freeman is like the god of this cast. Just Jesus fucking Christ. I literally cannot praise his performance enough, and it might stand as my favorite performance of his to date. And I tend to basically like everything that Crispin Freeman's ever done. But something about the way he voices Alucard really makes this a powerhouse performance. Alucard is ultimately both an enigma and wholly understandable, and once you realize and accept this dichotomy, it makes it all the more fun to not only experience the character, but experience Crispin Freeman's performance. Alucard is a character who ultimately wants to be defeated, and humanity's constant failure to do that clearly distresses and, in a way, depresses him. And yet at the same time, he knows he's unbeatable and relishes a good fight. He's the ultimate trump card because he possesses total self-awareness, and that's what makes Alucard such a great character. I mean, yeah, it's also because he's a badass in a pimpin' outfit, but really it's the self-awareness. I'll also note that Alucard truly made me question my humanity every time he got psyched for a fight, or for the chance to spill blood and wreak bloody destruction. It was like a high. I got freaking amped, like, yes, gimme! I'm a horrible human being. Ceres, too, becomes, for me, a little more likable, though I will say that the character development on her front was, again, a bit of a problem in Hellsing Ultimate. In this case, I thought it was rushed, where in Hellsing, I didn't really think she went real far. In Hellsing Ultimate, she just suddenly was doing things, and I went, okay, I don't know if this is an effective adaptation or whether this is what happens in the original manga, but it definitely felt really rushed. Another strong point of actually both series, but they're both very different, is the soundtrack. If I had to pick between the two, really wouldn't be able to, because I think each fits their respective storylines, tones, and moods. I think that the really just downright cool music of Hellsing fits what they were doing for that show. And I think the far more like epic, choir, bombastic craziness of Hellsing Ultimate fits that storyline. Two completely different takes, and yet both work. It would have been nice to hear some of the music from Hellsing and Hellsing Ultimate, but it's not something I necessarily needed. And I don't judge Hellsing Ultimate for going down a different path musically. So between the two, what Hellsing lacked up in plot, it sometimes made up for in terms of spreading out some of the character stories and giving you a little more time with them. And what Hellsing Ultimate did better in plot, it kind of lacked sometimes in character development. Ultimately, the two are just really different stories, just utilizing the same characters, and both have a lot of flaws. But they can be really enjoyable. If I had to pick between the two to watch, I would probably watch parts of Hellsing and then all of Hellsing Ultimate. There are some moments in the back half of Hellsing, as much as I rag on it, that I like, which is mainly the ending bit with Incognito, where he says, "Who are you?" And while Alucard doesn't answer who he is, seriously, if you have not figured out who Alucard is, like, I'm admittedly gonna be really disappointed, because yeah, it's revealed in Hellsing Ultimate who he is and all that, but like, seriously, I knew who Alucard was the moment I heard his name. Like, it just sort of seemed obvious. And with an agency called the Hellsing Organization, like, who in the world do you think Alucard is? Alucard is ultimately really the reason we go to the show. Let's be real, we want to watch Alucard kick ass. If you want something that's got way more action and is trying to be big, grand, and epic, you watch Hellsing Ultimate. If you want to watch something that's admittedly a little confused, trying to be a little more cool, you watch Hellsing. At the end of the day, I got a really badass vampire with a kickin' style. I got his master, who is literally like Ice Queen, just queen, slay, love Integra, think she's great. Walter, I have feelings about Walter, and I can't talk about them because spoilers. Either series, just spoilers. And in one of them, I at least got a Frenchman who was a mercenary and who tore my heart into pieces. How dare. And at the end of the day, I got something that made me want to go out and actually purchase a manga. This is very rare. Literally the only manga I own is Full Metal Alchemist. But that's it for me today, you guys. So until next time.
What a perfect night. The kind of night that makes me want to have a bite to drink.